In today's video, we're taking a closer look at the fascinating methods the Amish use to achieve just that. We'll discover how their deep respect for nature, careful choice of tools, and time-tested traditions allow them to transform small plots into abundant harvests. From mastering soil health to harnessing hidden water-saving techniques, you'll see why these practices stand out as both sustainable and surprisingly simple. Number 1. Soil mastery. Amish growers maintain that abundant harvests begin in the ground itself, turning ordinary dirt into a powerhouse of nutrition through carefully layered compost and patient stewardship. In many Amish homesteads, there is a designated compost area, about 3 feet square, where they pile leaves, straw, and other brown materials to introduce aeration. Next comes a thinner green layer of fresh grass clippings, kitchen scraps, or even weeds, capped by a sprinkle of existing garden soil to inoculate the pile with beneficial bacteria. This pattern repeats until the heap reaches a manageable height, maintaining a roughly 3-to-1 ratio of browns to greens. Moisture content is closely monitored. The pile should feel damp but not soggy. To maintain aeration, the compost is turned weekly with a pitchfork. Certain Amish families add crushed eggshells or coffee grounds to the mix, subtly boosting calcium and nitrogen levels. Scraps like banana peels supply potassium, making the final compost a balanced amendment that they call black gold. Once it matures, usually in 3 to 4 months, it is dark, crumbly, and teeming with microorganisms. Soil experts suggest that each handful of such compost can contain billions of beneficial microbes that help plants absorb nutrients more efficiently. The next layer of Amish soil mastery comes from rotation and cover crops. Heavy feeders like squash or corn often follow nitrogen-fixing peas and beans. This cycle prevents nutrient depletion and encourages biodiversity below the surface. Fields or garden beds might then be planted with a living mulch of clover or rye during the off-season. These green covers protect soil from erosion and break down to further enrich it. For fertility, the Amish steer clear of synthetic fertilizers, opting for aged manure, compost tea, or fish emulsions. They even bury decomposed wood scraps to act as moisture reservoirs, ensuring that the ground retains water well into dry spells. Soil analysis shows that Amish-managed plots typically hold far more organic matter than those reliant on chemical inputs. The result is a sponge-like soil capable of storing remarkable amounts of moisture. Some estimates say up to 20,000 gallons of water per acre, while also providing a stable environment for crucial soil organisms. The Amish phrase, "feed the soil and it will feed you," underscores their philosophy of returning as much to the land as they take out. By building soil health through composting, cover cropping, and minimal disturbance, they have established a foundation capable of sustaining plants across multiple seasons with minimal intervention. Number 2. Natural pest management. Rather than attacking pests with chemical sprays, Amish gardeners align with nature to maintain balanced ecosystems. They often plant aromatic or pungent companions like marigolds and garlic to ward off many harmful insects that target tomatoes, beans, or leafy greens. These plants release compounds that confuse pests, diverting them away from main crops. Another layer of defense is the daily pest patrol. Early each morning, gardeners inspect leaves and stems, removing slugs, beetles, or caterpillars by hand and dropping them into a bucket of soapy water. This might seem labor-intensive, but it prevents pests from multiplying unchecked. Strategic use of beneficial predators adds yet another layer to their pest-free success. Small brush piles around the perimeter attract toads, snakes, and ground beetles, each of which consumes large numbers of common garden pests. Meanwhile, native flowers, such as coneflower, yarrow, or lavender, serve as nectar sources for ladybugs, parasitic wasps, and lacewings. These insects happily feast on aphids, caterpillars, and other problematic invaders, providing a 24/7 defense system more effective than many chemical treatments. Because synthetic pesticides can linger in the soil and kill beneficial organisms, Amish communities typically avoid them. Studies show that repeated chemical use can lead to pesticide-resistant bugs, making the problem worse over time. The Amish, by contrast, create companion confusion. Basil near tomatoes repels hornworms, while nasturtiums lure aphids away from beans. This intercropping ensures that no pest has an easy path to devastate an entire bed. By giving each species a role, repelling enemies, attracting good insects, or enhancing flavor, the Amish transform gardens into dynamic, self-regulating habitats. Their approach often results in less than 10% crop loss, which is on par with or even superior to conventional gardens doused in chemicals. More importantly, these natural techniques improve each year as beneficial insects and predators multiply in harmony with the changing environment. In essence, the Amish pest strategy is a simple equation. Create conditions where nature's helpers thrive and pests never get a strong foothold. Number 3, greenhouse ingenuity. While many imagine Amish farming as an outdoor-only affair, one of their most fascinating secrets is how they maximize tiny spaces by building surprisingly productive greenhouses. Although these structures can be quite modest, some no larger than 12 by 20 feet, they support up to 4 harvest cycles annually. By carefully designing the greenhouse layout, the Amish place taller crops like tomatoes along the north wall and shorter greens in the sunniest zones. Hanging baskets for strawberries or herbs occupy overhead space, ensuring no area goes unused. One hallmark of Amish greenhouse design is the passive solar approach. Instead of relying on electric heaters, they paint the north wall with dark colors or construct it from concrete blocks that absorb daytime heat and release it gradually overnight. Another warming trick is the manure method, whereby fresh horse manure is layered with straw inside a trench. As it decomposes, it emits heat that can maintain the interior temperature several degrees above freezing in colder months. Because no electricity is needed, these greenhouses can be erected almost anywhere and managed inexpensively. Ventilation is handled by roll-up sides and simple roof vents. At the first sign of overheating, a pulley system allows fresh air to circulate without the need for electric fans. Rainwater collected from the roof is stored in barrels inside the greenhouse, both for handy irrigation and to add thermal mass. During winter days, dark-painted water jugs placed among rows of plants absorb heat, releasing it at night to help keep temperatures stable. The orientation of the structure also matters. Many Amish families situate the greenhouse so that the transparent south side captures the strongest sunlight through the day, while the earth-bermed north wall remains more insulated. This orientation optimizes warmth, a crucial factor for cold climates. With consistent care, it's not unusual to see vine-ripened tomatoes even in late fall. By extending the growing season before spring and well after autumn, one greenhouse can supply fresh produce year-round, freeing families from high grocery costs and ensuring a steady supply of nutritious vegetables. Number 4, smart crop selection. The art of producing a year's worth of food in limited space depends heavily on choosing crops that give maximum yield for the effort. Many Amish gardeners focus on root vegetables like beets, potatoes, carrots, and turnips. These store well and offer high calorie density. Because the tops are also edible or compostable, such crops provide double value. Leafy greens, especially kale, Swiss chard, and collards, are prized for their cut-and-come-again properties. Harvesting the outer leaves continuously triggers new growth, meaning a small patch of greens can feed a family over multiple months. Similarly, climbing beans that wrap around poles, such as Kentucky Wonder or Blue Lake varieties, yield 2 to 3 times the harvest of bush beans in the same square footage. Short season or dwarf fruit varieties also play key roles. Dwarf apple or pear trees often reach just 8 feet in height, but can pump out dozens of pounds of fruit annually. These smaller trees take well to backyard settings, and some are self-pollinating, reducing the need for multiple varieties. Herbs like thyme, sage, and oregano require minimal space, but offer huge returns as both culinary and medicinal staples. In typical Amish gardens, perennial herbs claim a dedicated zone, rewarding gardeners year after year without replanting. Volunteer crops are another quirky but effective trick. Certain flowers, tomatoes, lettuce, or dill are allowed to go to seed at season's end. Those seeds naturally scatter and sprout the next year. Free plants that require virtually zero work. Instead of ripping every plant out by the roots, Amish gardeners leave a few healthy specimens to seed, counting on nature to handle some of the replanting. This method also fosters local adaptation, since the volunteer seedlings evolve to suit the microclimate of that particular garden. Storage potential guides variety selection as well. Many prefer firm onions like Patterson or Copra for their ability to remain fresh for months, while winter squashes like Hubbard or Butternut last through chilly weather with minimal spoilage. For summer produce, the Amish look for varieties that produce consistently over time rather than all at once. A prime example, pole beans that keep flowering until frost, ensuring a steady trickle of fresh pods instead of a massive glut. By combining these careful choices, it's possible to meet nutritional needs from a fraction of the space a typical gardener might assume is necessary. Number 5. Vertical and intensive planting. Empty ground is practically non-existent in an Amish plot. The approach is to use every dimension, length, width, and height, to grow a surprising quantity of food. One technique involves arching cattle panels between raised beds, creating a tunnel. Vines like cucumbers, melons, and squash climb overhead, while shade-tolerant herbs or leafy greens flourish underneath. This setup not only conserves space but also makes harvesting simpler, since the fruits dangle down through the grid. In classic raised beds, the Amish often apply intensive spacing. Rather than placing plants with excessive gaps, they position them just far enough to reach their mature size. This can differ from conventional seed packet recommendations, but the outcome is a dense canopy that shades out weeds while maximizing yield per square foot. If plants grow too closely, a bit of strategic pruning ensures adequate airflow, preventing disease. Containers are another avenue for those with tiny yards or even just balconies. Repurposed barrels, large buckets, or wooden crates house tomatoes, herbs, and dwarf fruit trees. By placing these containers near kitchens, gardeners can quickly snip fresh ingredients without tromping through the yard. Some families also integrate edible flowers like nasturtiums or pansies into container arrangements, doubling as both aesthetic and gastronomic accents. Amish gardeners emphasize intercropping, layering root vegetables beneath taller species. Carrots or radishes might share ground with pole beans, developing underground while the beans stretch skyward. Lettuce or mesclun greens grow well in partial shade cast by climbing peas, prolonging their tenderness in hot months. Their philosophy: the soil is like a layered cake, and each level can be occupied by roots, stems, or climbing vines, provided they do not suffocate each other. By focusing on vertical structures, high-density placement, and layered planting, the Amish can harvest a surprising volume from what appear to be modest garden plots. They carefully time planting so that as one crop finishes, another is planted in its wake, ensuring the ground is never left idle. In this choreographed dance of space, sunlight, and plant maturity, every inch is used to its fullest capacity. Number 6. The right tools. The Amish seldom rely on battery-powered devices or fancy machines that need constant repair. Instead, they invest in rugged hand tools that, with proper maintenance, can serve generations. Chief among these is a well-made hoe. Stirrup hose, Warren hose, and standard draw hose all have distinct purposes. A stirrup hoe skims just beneath the soil, slicing off weed seedlings. A pointed Warren hoe carves neat furrows for seeding, while a draw hoe does heavier work, like forming mounds around potato stems. Hand trowels forged from high-carbon steel are carefully balanced so they glide smoothly through the soil. Wooden dibbers with depth markings ensure uniform seed placement, minimizing wasted seeds. Broad forks loosen compacted soil layers without flipping them, an approach that preserves beneficial microbes, worms, and microchannels. This gentle aeration helps roots sink deeper and find moisture. Pruning tools are another cornerstone. Razor-sharp pruners and saws keep fruit trees, vines, or brambles in optimal shape. With each cut, they remove damaged wood and promote healthier new growth. Leather holsters for these tools attach to belts, preventing them from getting lost or dulled. Time spent sharpening and oiling edges is never seen as wasted. The Amish say that a well-kept blade reduces workload by half. For hauling compost or heavier items, wheelbarrows sport solid steel or wooden wheels instead of inflatable tires that can go flat. Handles are positioned to provide maximum leverage, minimizing back strain. During harvest time, sturdy woven baskets, often handmade from oak or hickory, carry produce without bruising. Their slightly slanted sides help stack them neatly in storage. Maintenance is practically a ritual. After each day's work, tools get brushed free of dirt and wiped down with an oiled rag. Wooden handles are treated with linseed oil periodically, preventing splitting or splintering. Sharpening stones are used regularly to keep hoe edges crisp. Though this routine requires discipline, it pays dividends in longevity and ease of use. By keeping their equipment simple, durable, and well-tended, Amish gardeners avoid the repairs and fuel costs that plague modern mechanical tools. Number 7. Water wisdom. Many modern gardeners rely on sprinklers or hoses, often oversaturating the soil. In contrast, the Amish approach aims to maximize every drop. Rain barrels placed strategically around the house, barn, or greenhouse catch runoff. Often, these barrels connect in a series of overflow pipes, storing hundreds of gallons from a single downpour. The first flush of roof water, which might contain debris, is diverted before entering the main barrel to keep the stored water cleaner. To deliver water efficiently, they may bury unglazed clay pots known as ollas near plant roots. These slowly seep moisture into the surrounding soil, reducing evaporation losses by up to 70%. For row crops, mulching with straw, shredded leaves, or even living ground covers helps regulate soil temperature and trap moisture. Shallow-rooted cover crops like purslane can also be grown between rows, shading the soil while providing an edible green. Irrigation timing is another piece of the puzzle. The Amish generally water in the early morning so that foliage dries by evening, lessening the risk of fungal diseases. When particularly dry spells are predicted, they water more deeply a few days in advance, what some call prophetic watering. This encourages plants to root deeper, tapping into subsoil moisture. Keyhole gardens demonstrate how they innovate in tight spaces. These circular raised beds have a central compost tower. Kitchen scraps placed in that tower break down and release nutrients into the soil, while water poured into it distributes moisture directly to the roots. A small walkway or keyhole gives easy access to the center. Reports suggest this design can reduce water use by as much as 80% compared to more conventional raised beds, and it's ideal for yards with poor native soil. For orchard trees or berry bushes, the Amish sometimes dig shallow swales, small ditches on contours, to capture rainwater instead of letting it run off. Household gray water can be reused on ornamental plants, especially during drought. By systematically capturing and directing water, Amish gardens remain vibrant even under scorching conditions. Modern horticultural research confirms that micro-irrigation, mulch, and soil building create remarkable water efficiency, all of which the Amish have practiced long before it became mainstream. Number 8. Community and preservation. Amish communities have perfected not just the art of growing food, but also preserving it for the lean months and coordinating efforts for maximum efficiency. Root cellars remain a staple, dug into north-facing slopes, reinforced with stone, and sectioned to maintain different humidity levels. Carrots, potatoes, and beets thrive in higher humidity zones, while onions, garlic, and winter squash prefer drier storage. Many vegetables remain crisp into late winter or early spring this way, without any external power source. Canning is another beloved tradition. Rather than sporadic batches, the Amish often practice sequential canning. The jars used for early summer peaches become available for tomatoes later, and then for applesauce or pumpkin puree in fall. They also schedule group canning sessions where multiple canners run at once over a single heat source, conserving both fuel and time. Low-acid foods like green beans or meats go through pressure canners in carefully timed cycles, ensuring safety. Fermentation techniques, including sauerkraut, pickles, and various fermented vegetables, help extend shelf life and increase nutritional value. Crocks of salted herbs, layered with coarse salt, retain flavor all winter. Passive solar dehydrators dry fruits and veggies using only sun-heated airflow, sometimes integrated into greenhouse designs where vents funnel warm air across racks of produce. After a day or two, apples, tomatoes, or peppers become shelf-stable for months. Parallel to these preservation methods, the Amish rely heavily on communal labor and resource sharing. Families divide seed-saving duties. One household might focus on heirloom tomatoes, another on squash seeds, and another on pole beans. This specialization leads to stronger crop strains and more consistent yields. Tool libraries further reduce individual costs. Well-maintained hoes, broad forks, or pruners can rotate among different hands. Large tasks like building greenhouses or setting up new raised beds become work frolics, akin to barn raisings where multiple families converge. These gatherings often transform a week's labor into a single day, with everyone sharing both knowledge and jokes as they hustle. Harvesting big fields of potatoes or onions is likewise a community event, with a systematic approach that handles bulk volumes swiftly. All this coordination nurtures resilience. If one family's garden suffers a pest infestation or weather damage, neighbors pitch in with extra seedlings or surplus produce. The sense of group responsibility means food security remains high, even if certain individual plots face challenges. By pooling their efforts in seed saving, pest management, large-scale preservation, and labor, Amish communities collectively enjoy harvests that support them year-round. The lessons gleaned from Amish strategies apply broadly. Even in urban settings, small groups can swap seedlings or share expensive tools. Backyard gardeners might replicate aspects of Amish root cellars by creating cool storage spaces in garages or basements. People can coordinate group canning days with friends, reducing workload and capitalizing on bulk produce purchases. Seed exchanges online replicate the Amish concept of shared genetic resources. Such cooperative methods reveal that the real secret goes beyond any single trick. Compost layering, companion planting, or greenhouse engineering all play vital roles. But it's the synergy, the mutual aid, the shared knowledge, and the hands-on dedication that delivers year-round sustenance in surprisingly small places. By fusing ancient wisdom with inventive modern twists, Amish gardeners offer a blueprint for growing and preserving 1 year of food in spaces many assume are too cramped. Their collaborative, resource-conscious approach stands as proof that with the right planning, methods, and communal spirit, bountiful self-reliance is within reach for just about anyone.